I happen to be an expert in that area because I have 4 houses with oil tanks. Here's the scoop, okay? First of all, if the seller is aware that there is a buried oil tank, they have 2 choices. One is they have to disclose it. Choice 2 is they have to disclose it. If they didn't, then it's either maybe a piece of property that was inherited by a family member and they probably marked no representation, so they weren't aware that it was there. So 2 things happen. Number 1 is if you purchase the home with the oil tank, if you inspect that oil tank, if you pay to have it inspected, the moment that is inspected, and if the results are that there is a leak, the seller is then responsible for remediating that leak and anything having to do with the soil around it. Well, there's less and less of those, except for you see it a lot of times with FHA. But the second side to that is there is a fund out there, and right now I actually remediated an oil tank on one of my houses, and you remediate the tank. The cost though was about $9,000. Of that, I'm going to get about $5,200 of it back. But they were able to remediate it. So there's still a risk around, getting it fully remediated and getting it signed off, and it takes about 6 months to get the money back, which I'm waiting on now. It's all been approved.
Hey Dennis, just to be clear now, because you know about this tank, I would make sure that you write that into any offer that you make on the property, is that it is their responsibility to make sure that that is in good standing and that it's not leaking. For a lot of people out there, maybe if you hadn't seen that oil tank and you got into the transaction, our North Carolina real estate contracts are written as is. So as Paul mentioned, that it is their responsibility, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to follow through with the transaction.
Yeah, and if it does transfer to you, it becomes your child.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and again, there's a mixed bag going back and forth related to that, Dennis, and it's a pretty long conversation. If you ever want to give me a call at our office at 846-DUN or 846-3663, I can walk you through whatever questions you may have related more to the whole thing. Yeah, well, thank you, my friend.
Thanks.
Appreciate it very much. Well, thanks for
Dennis.
listening. Best to you. Have a good Saturday.
Good Saturday.
Hey, Paul, I want to follow up
Yeah, I was
with
going to say, what do you guys do for those?
Well, I was going to ask Paul, it's my understanding, now obviously we refer a environmental type person
Sure.
if we come across that, but it's my understanding that
Yeah, it's 3 pages in the report. Just so you know, Preston. You kill a tree to tell me about an oil tank.
Yeah. Well, obviously they're going to have a specialist come look at it, but from what I understand, and I could be wrong about this, but what I understand is if it doesn't leak, there's a less expensive way to rectify it.
Yes.
If you could fill it with either sand or
or
foam
foam.
or something. But now if it leaks, they're going to have to dig it up and dig all the soil around it, which is the more expensive. Is that what you're
That's
hearing?
what I had done, yeah. Now, the way they test for that is they put a stick down in there and they look for water in the oil.
Okay.
And if there's water in the oil,
It leaks.
they make the immediate assumption that there's a leak.
Right.
I guess that's kind of like a window seal being broken in between the different panes. Is that if you've got water in, and the water is somehow, it's broken that seal.
Right, I'll take a broken window seal any day.
Have you ever heard that story? Bill Gallagher says he's an instructor, a real estate.
He's been on the
instructor.
show with us. Yeah.
Oh, has he? He, he used to be a broker, and he had a house. He said he had this old, older farmer fella, and he said he had three oil tanks. And why do you have 3 buried oil tanks? Because 2 of them leak.
Oh my!